United States Ambassador to South Africa, Reuben Brigety, accusing our country of assisting Russia with arms to aid in the fight against Ukraine, or Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Pretoria has expressed disappointment, they say, in the manner in which these revelations have been made. South Africa is saying it will look into the matter. There is now an inquiry that's been appointed, we understand, to be led by a retired judge. So this morning we're asking, what does it mean in the context of geopolitics and whether Washington is drawing the line? Can these two nations and their relations survive this? We're joined this morning by a project manager at the Institute for Race Relations. Terence Corrigan joins us via our video link this morning. Terence, good morning. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming on. We're sort of far from Reuben Brigety and the fact that he arrived in South Africa, went on all kinds of touristy events. He's been eating local food. That's over now. He's drawn the line.
Yeah, I think that's correct, and I think that there's a history of this. It was very interesting that he quoted from an ANC party document, and this is something I've been pointing out for years. If anyone reading that cannot help but see the dogged ideological hostility from the ANC towards the geopolitical West, and particularly the ANC, and I think that. Now that we face a situation in which the United States does feel that its very serious national interests are being threatened, it is, as you say, drawing the line. I think this is a slightly different issue from the question of the ship, but certainly the ruling party of this country has made no secret of its hostile approach to the United States. And I think ultimately that was always going to come home to roost. And I think it could well come home in the form of the loss of trade privileges.
Let's just take a step back, Terence. We've had a lot of weigh-in from other political parties. Julius Malema, for one, says it doesn't make sense that South Africa would supply a country like Russia with arms. Russia has all the arms that it needs. On a very practical level, does South Africa have the ability to do what the U.S. has accused the country of doing?
This is a tricky question. My understanding of South Africa's arms industry is that most of our equipment is actually made to a NATO standard, not a Russian standard. So there's not much compatibility between a lot of the equipment that we produce. Russia does have a large internal arms industry. Plus, it has massive stockpiles. But from what I can gauge from what is in the public domain about things we have traded with Russia militarily in the past, it seems that this could actually not be the sort of lethal weapons, but things like integration systems, observation equipment. It's a kind of dual use or perhaps non-lethal technology, which is extremely important on a battlefield. So yes, it is possible. I, for one, would like to see what evidence the ambassador has. He said that they are confident, which would seem to me to leave some small out in terms of how sure they are. But I must say, I just can't take the position of the South African government seriously that they don't really know what was going on.
Yeah.
This was a ship that sailed into a military port, and for the president and the Minister of Defense to pretend that they don't know what was going on, I find absolutely incredible in the true sense, not credible.
Yeah. And also not an isolated event, given that we also held those military drills with Russia on the anniversary of its invasion of Ukraine. So Reuben Brigety says on the issue of evidence, which you've just raised, that he feels incredibly confident about what he was saying yesterday, so confident that he would bet his life on it, he says. Our response to that is probably predictable, that we're going to launch an inquiry.
Well, yes, but as I say, I just find it not credible that the President and the Minister of Defense do not know what the purpose was of a foreign ship docking in a naval port with its identification system turned off. Now, maybe there is an explanation, but this does rather look to me like footage of someone wearing a ski mask walking into a bank. I don't think that there could be any innocent explanation for it. And frankly, I dispute that the president and the minister do not know. All I can conclude, and this is necessarily speculative or deductive, is that something did transpire in that port that they are not keen to tell the world about.
Yeah.
If it was baby food, I really don't see what the problem would be. If, however, it's observation equipment or rocket propellant, then that becomes a very, very serious issue. As I say, I think this is South Africa, lining up what it considers to be its geopolitical interest to the exclusion of any sort of practical considerations. We trade very little with Russia. We trade an enormous amount with the geopolitical West, and I think that my sense is that the ruling party is willing to take a great deal of damage in order to assert those political interests. The question is whether South Africa's people should be willing to pay that price as well.
Yeah, and if we don't know what the ship was doing here, at best there is an explanation, as you say. At worst, we really don't know what the ship was doing there. Or worse still, we knew very well, and it was loaded with whatever it was loaded with. Either way, will an inquiry led by a retired judge, is this the right forum to get to the bottom of it?
Let's just say this is a predictable response for the government. You can go back into the 1990s. It's an inquiry. It's the Zondo Commission. It's whatever. It's something that will kick the issue into touch in the hope that it goes away. And after the furor has died down, the report can either be shelved or some sort of token action can be taken. But as I say, I simply think that this mistakes the seriousness of this of the situation, and I think that the president is living in a dream world if he thinks that this is going to be seen as an adequate response by the Americans. And I think it's also deeply insulting to South Africa's people. I watched his performance in Parliament, and I must say I don't get angered very easily, but I thought that was just dreadfully insulting to South Africa's people to pretend that he lacked information.
Right,
Let me say something else.
Mm.
That if indeed they do not know, then that is a failure of intelligence which rivals the disaster that brought us the July riots a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That a foreign ship can sail into a military base with its identification switched off, load and unload goods without the political authorities knowing about it.
There is no best case scenario here. Yeah, there's absolutely no best case scenario. All right, let's talk about the other.
I don't think there is a good scenario.
Yeah, let's talk about the other issues that are obviously playing into what the U.S. ambassador had to say yesterday. It's the issue of the BRICS summit, right? Well, there are two issues. It's the BRICS summit and it's the AGOA that we rely on quite heavily in South Africa. As you say, we trade very little with Russia, much more with the geopolitical West. Let's start with the BRICS summit. The Mail and Guardian this morning is saying all kinds of things, but essentially that a proposal was put on the table by Naledi Pandor, the International Relations Minister in South Africa, for Vladimir Putin to attend the summit virtually. It was shot down by his government. He is adamant that he will make a personal appearance on South African soil for the BRICS summit. The EFF's Julius Malema says what Brigety had to say in that briefing yesterday is an attempt to intimidate South Africa, given that the Russian president will likely land here on South African soil. There are so many issues playing into what is unfolding currently.
Yes. Well, okay. On that, in a way, I'm a bit surprised about the furor around. There's no way South Africa is going to take any action against Vladimir Putin. Remember when Omar al-Bashir was here, there was a court order to arrest him, and Mr. Montashe, I think he was the Secretary General of the ANC at the time, said bluntly, from time to time these will be ignored. That is the approach of the incumbent government. It doesn't, there's a strange disconnect. South Africa wants to be a leading global citizen, but also wants to be able to skirt these things when it's inconvenient. So Vladimir Putin can come here. Nothing is going to happen to him. He knows that. South Africa knows that. The United States knows that. However, it does put South Africa in a bit of a bind. It simply can't reconcile its commitment to the ICC with allowing someone to sort of walk free. So I think that leaves South Africa essentially saying that it's a paper member. And in my view, if that's its stance, then it would probably be more candid just to leave. Vladimir Putin is not going to be. It's not in his nature to be kind of sidelined like this. He's the leading man. He's certainly not going to be dictated to by the small S in the BRICS group, sort of failing state that's been taken in to give Africa a token presence there. It's not going to happen.
So is it a foregone conclusion then, after 2025, that we will no longer be a part of AGOA?
I don't know. Look, I think my own experience dealing with foreign diplomats and foreign business people, mostly Europeans and Asians, is that there remains a great deal of sympathy and goodwill towards South Africa. But remember that AGOA is an extraordinarily generous provision, and it does come with non-economic conditions. If South Africa is determined to thumb its nose, then there's no particular reason why it's going to retain that goodwill. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. There's a few things that do concern me. One of them is that I think that we have like most of our state, fairly dysfunctional diplomatic service. I don't know what's being done to try and win goodwill. My understanding is that the delegation that recently went to Washington timed it at a time when congressional leaders weren't even in town, and then thought it was beneath their dignity to meet their aides. Meeting the Congressional Black Caucus and anti-apartheid movement veterans is just not. It doesn't do very much. You need to actually speak to people who don't trust you. But that just doesn't seem to be on the radar. There may be reasons for which America would want to keep South Africa on board, in the hope that these relations can be repaired, that you don't want to alienate it entirely.
Let's hope so, Terence. Right? Let's certainly hope so. It's something that we can ill afford, as you say, just given the economic benefits that come with AGOA for our country. Terence Corrigan, let me thank you for your time this morning. He's a project manager at the Institute for Race Relations.